Could you give us a short overview of the topic that you chose for the case of corruption of media, and what was your incentive for that case?
Well, in August, on the 2nd of August, Serbian government adopted a set of media laws, and in the Public Information Act, it is allowed for cable operators, distributors to also be content providers, which was not the case before, and which is not the case in many other European countries, and which is not also the case in Croatia and Slovenia as EU member states. So this particular provision opened doors for N1 regional television, which is seen as affiliate in the Balkans, to operate across the region. And the television went on air on October 30. And now we have this new regional television. So my idea was to see how come. I mean, I didn't want to deal with the content of the content of the particular TV station, but just to see how come that Brussels allowed this provision particular in the law to be adopted. How come it passed the European Commission? Because Serbia is a EU candidate country, is supposed to send through EU integration office in Belgrade every single law to Brussels for comments, and then once they get comments back, the draft law can actually go for adoption in the government and in the parliament. So, and here is this totally different situation. Like, instead of dealing with corruptive practices in my own country, I wanted to see what was happening and found some non-transparent procedures and practices within the European Commission, which were actually led to this N1 television operating here. And it turned out that there were three different fronts of fighting for this change, which led actually for European Commission to amend this provision and this law. And that is one was with this KKR private equity fund, which is the owner of and EBRD also as a co-owner of this N1 television, but also through public debates. And the third and the most probably the biggest field for fight was for this was actually lobbying. And lobbying was coming from two major powers. One was EBRD as one of the biggest financial institutions in Europe, and on the other side it was coming from the KKR as one of few biggest private equity funds in the world. So having these two sides, European Commission, this particular Serbian unit in DG Enlargement, just decided to let this law, and which is actually threatening to undermine media pluralism in Serbia.
As you described, it was a complex story.
Yeah.
But what will you choose as like the most difficult experience during the investigation of the story?
Oh, well, it was complicated from the very beginning. First of all, see what was going on inside Serbia, what was going on with all these working groups, because these laws have been drafted for years. And it was complicated to see who was doing what, so I interviewed many people, and I got all different stories from them, what was going on, because I couldn't figure out, because there were also some people within working groups who also opted for this thing, but then in the end, Serbian government did send the right and proper version to Brussels, which later on got changed. So it was, that was the hardest part for me to just, since it's a very complex thing, just to see what was really going on within there, and then to figure out that Serbian government in the end and this working group within the Ministry of Culture and the Media did respect Serbian national interest and did send the proper version, but then it got changed. And now we now have these new laws, and there is no changes. So we will now see what will be happening with it.
And for the end, what do you think? What should be done in order to improve work of investigative journalists such as yourself to deal with these kind of topics?
Well, the biggest problem, I think, at least in my country, is not having these state institutions not being that open to journalists, and hiding many things, or not being able to talk on the record and so on. And in this particular case, it was also a problem with because I was dealing with something that was non-transparent happening in Brussels, and Brussels is perceived from the Serbian perspective as something that we just cannot touch. We just can't, even ask themselves whether something got wrong somewhere there and who are all those people and so on. So, but I didn't have that many problem getting in touch with people in the European Commission, and but from these private firms, definitely I did have many problems. So in terms of improving, I don't see how we can actually make these private companies be more cooperative, especially if we are dealing with them. But so just to have at least state institutions in our own countries more open to provide data and to at least answer on time, not to have to chase them and then wait these legally prescribed 15-day. So it's kind of a long and complicated process, and not to mention getting documents from them. That's a whole new level and completely different story.